All right, everybody. We're still waiting on a few other people, but this gives us a good opportunity to have a conversation about what to expect for the next maybe 2 hours and kind of where we're looking to go with it and how we got here. So just before we start, I'll give you some general overview. The overview is the portions that I'm talking right now, I do record. I have a microphone on me. I have a camera in the back. It doesn't record any of your faces. The reason I record this is we put clips out on social media for this. It happened by accident. What happened is about 3 years ago, and I'll get into the history of kind of how we ended up here. We ended up doing some stuff in the space of gang prevention. We got on social media. We put on a couple clips. And what we realized when we put the clips up on social media was it was getting attention from different people that don't sit in this room. We're talking about people in different levels of government that have the ability to take what we learn in this room and package it and send it out. I mean, I can talk in this room where there may be 50 to 80 people, but some of the video clips that we put online get 12, 13, 14, or 15,000 views. And the point of that is to bring in attention and advocacy work to some of the root causes behind gangs and gang violence in the city. So for us, the only reason I record this is it's not for me. It just helps us get eyes, ears, and support back to the communities that need it. Now, for something like this, while we have some people that are coming in from some of your guests, some of you have spoke to me and said that there's people that are a few minutes late, 5, 10 minutes late, they're just finding parking. It gives us a good opportunity to at least have some time here to chat. And I'll ask you here right now, what brought you here today? What was it about gang prevention or gangs in general that brought you here today? Was it a personal experience? Are you a concerned citizen? Did something happen to you? Did something happen to your kids? Did something happen to somebody you know? Or do you just have an interest in learning more about gangs in the city of Toronto? Anybody? Yes, sir.
The gun just keeps going off.
I said a gun just keeps going off.
And it's like that has to be reduced somehow.
And he says it has to reduce. Does anybody else feel that same concern? That every time they look in the newspaper right now, there's another shooting? And how does that make you feel as a community member that lives in some of the most impacted communities in the city of Toronto when it comes down to guns and gangs? Do you feel safe? Does anybody here feel safe 100% of the time when you're in the city of Toronto? That's fantastic. Does anybody here feel unsafe sometimes? Yeah, I feel unsafe. So if I were to ask you, a man in the back, what makes you feel unsafe, what would you say?
Well, just how the random shootings in daylight hours. Before it used to be like what at night, now it's daytime. And people are losing it.
So what she said is, for those of you who didn't hear, random shootings, daytime hours, and people are losing it. So what do you mean by people are losing it?
I just feel sorry for the young people today that they're just lost. They somehow, I don't know if it's to do with their family upbringing or they're just a lost people looking for something to occupy their time and make it big somehow. I don't know. But behind that face, there's a soul, and it needs to be recognized.
Yeah.
We have to help them somehow. There has to be some way, get them in some programs or just make them feel worthy of killing people. They're killing young people. It's just sad.
It's very sad. So you know what's crazy to me, but not so crazy, is this is our 9th town hall in 6 weeks. And the reason why we have 31 of these, I'll get into during the actual presentation, but in every single one of them, and we've gone from east, west to downtown, it's been the same story. And everybody can kind of recognize that and say, you got kids doing stuff to kids. Some people are angry, and some people are sad. Some people are upset. Some people want justice. Some people want change. But everybody wants something, but there's some recognition at a very humane level that there's something wrong. Does anybody here, and you don't have to voice up why you're here. I only want the people who are comfortable in talking. By all means, you can talk, and this is a conversation. But going forward from here, what we're going to do is we're going to go through a 20 to 40 minute presentation depending on the participation from you guys and where you guys want to talk about certain things. And then after that, what happens is I take off the microphone, we take off the cameras, we take a quick 5-minute break, and then we have an open, honest discussion. And in that open and honest discussion, I promise you that we will keep everything confidential and anonymous. Not only that, we're not looking for information about what gangs are doing in your neighborhood in terms of, you know, person A is dealing drugs at a house B. We're not looking for that today. What we're looking for is insights into what it's looking like from a community level outwards. what's happening in the areas that we don't know. As police officers, we don't know everything. We know what we know very well, but we're on the outside looking in. What we really need is the inside looking out to help us fill those gaps going forward to effectively stop the growth of gangs as well as gang violence in the city. So in that, what I ask is that if you do feel comfortable speaking about your experiences or what you see, and we'll go through kind of what that looks like, and I'll give you some examples at the tail end before we start. By all means, we openly encourage that. We need to hear it. And not only do we hear it and we collect it and we protect you, but we use our chain as a Toronto Police Service representative, as an organization, to go touch base with every other government organization that we deal with to say, these are the concerns coming from the community. Some of it is not flattering to us, and we're okay with that. But the point is, it's about getting better, and that's the theme. That being said, my name is Ron Chinzer. I am a detective constable at the Toronto Police Service. This is where I work. That is my partner and my supervisor, Detective Jason Kondo, in the back. He's not as good looking as me. That's why he sits in the back. Yeah, that's why. We usually wear a suit and a tie, and I should bring this point up very quickly. Every one of these town halls that we've done, we've changed it from the last one. And the reason we've changed it from the last one is we get feedback, and we take that feedback very seriously. The first one that we did, we had suits and ties, we had police officers in here that were all in a uniform, and the feedback from the community that we were in at the time was it was intimidating. And the suit and tie created a bigger disconnect. So we got rid of the suit and tie, and then we got rid of the uniform officers. There are officers here today. There are officers that work in your community and in your neighborhood, and some of those neighborhood officers are there standing behind you. They're all friendly looking with their cool beards. Just giving them a hard time. They all smile. They're all easy to get along with guys. I just talked to them. 3 out of the 4 are pretty nice. That one guy causes a problem all the time, apparently. I don't know. But they're here for you. And we have some other students from University of Guelph-Humber that help us. We have 12 students over the last 3 years that have come and helped us with various things, including planning these things, doing research, doing some academic work for us. And then we have some other officers who are coming in to provide their expertise and insights to what they know on their back end of their policing investigation. But that being said, this is the Integrated Gang Prevention Task Force, and we strategically chose that name. And I want you to think about this now. This is about vision. Right? This is absolutely what a vision is. And what a vision is the ability to see something that nobody else can see. And when we first had this conversation of what is gang prevention and where this all came from, I'll tell you, 3 years ago, we have a deputy chief. And I know the police lingo, it kind of throws people off. Even I get confused. It's totally normal. But I want you to think of a major corporation. So somebody give me a big company outside of police. McDonald's. All right, everybody knows about McDonald's? Well, guess what? McDonald's has a president or a CEO. Right? That's the number one person in McDonald's. Well, the equivalent in policing is our chief of police. So think of the chief of police as the CEO. The McDonald's CEO, underneath McDonald's CEO, they might have 4 vice presidents. And those 4 vice presidents are in charge of different things. One might be in charge of sales, one might be in charge of burgers, one might be in charge of the ice cream machine, which never works in the summertime, and the last one might be in charge of coffee. That's what the 4 VPs take care of. Well, with us, our vice presidents are called deputy chiefs. And for Jason and myself, we work in the Gun and Gang Task Force on the street team, going out there and finding gang members that are shooting people and trafficking in guns and trafficking in underage women and dealing drugs. And we got a call one day from our higher up named Deputy Chief Jim Raymer. And he came down and he's in charge of all the stuff that we do on the Gun and Gang Task Force, as well as our drug squad and some other cool sounding things. And he came down and he had traveled quite a bit in Canada as well as the United States. And he came back and he spoke to Jason. He said, Jason, listen, this is what I want to do. We need to figure out a way to get a gang member out of a gang. For 15 years, we've been going into communities and neighborhoods, doing what we do as law enforcement, going in there and finding the most violent people in the community and arresting them, but it's not really dealing with the problem. Every year, do those numbers go down or do they go up? They're kind of going up. So for us, it was we need to evolve on the strategies that we're doing now that work very well as police officers because we have a unique point, and that point is we are the beginning of an entry into a criminal justice system for kids that are gang members or adults that are gang members. And when I say kids going forward, I don't want you to think of a 12-year-old. I want you to think of somebody 21 and under because that's who I'm referring to when I say a kid. So he said, guys, we need to figure out how to get a gang member out of gang. And Jason and I spoke, and Jason said, Ron, I need you to help me, please. You're the smartest guy I know. You're the tallest guy I know. You're the most handsome guy I know. And I said, stop, Jason, but tell me more later. And I decided I'm going to do this. So Jason and I started 3 years ago. And at the very beginning, we said, all right, going to get a gang member out of a gang. Jason has been in guns and gangs for 15 years. And in that, Jason is debriefed, which means he's kind of reverse interviewed gang members, thousands of them. For myself, I had maybe done a couple hundred. But at that time, we both had an understanding, and we sat in the office one day, we got a coffee, and we said, all right, day one, how are we going to get a gang member out of a gang? And I'll ask you here, how do we get a gang member out of a gang? What do you guys think?
Figure out what his incentives are.
Incentives, right? Kind of what is the prize to get the person out of the gang? That's perfect. That's a good way to get it out, right? But what else do we have to do? Yes, sir.
Somehow build their self-esteem.
Self-esteem, right? So we did things like this, where we sat in the office, we talked for a couple days, and we said, we're going to create this vision. We know what the vision is. It's to get a gang member out of a gang, but now we have to figure out how are we going to actually do this. So we sat there and we thought about it. We came up with hundreds of different things that we had to deal with. We decided that we're going to take a different route. We decided we're going to get back to reading books and academic evaluation. So we went to the academic environment. We went to universities, colleges. We found publications from all over the world, and we wanted to see, does any other place in the world, it doesn't matter if it's police, hospitals, community housing, any government agency, does anybody in the world have an effective way of getting a gang member out of a gang? And what do you think we found? Nothing. Nobody in the world has an evaluated, effective, and evidence-based proven way to get a gang member out of a gang. So we became a little defeated, but we did learn a lot. We'd spent 6 months to a year diving in books, researching, speaking to people all over Ontario, Canada, United States, Europe, and South America. We wanted to say, all these people impacted by gangs, what are you doing that works? And we compiled a list of 100 different strategies that work depending on the type of person. But the benefit to doing all this research and reading the books and talking to people was we learned a lot of things, and the most important thing that we did learn was, while there might not be an effective way to get a gang member out of a gang, there are many ways you can prevent a kid from the age of 0 to 21 from getting in a gang in the first place. And they're easy to do and they work. So today, with us here, we're going to go through some of that in a very quick level. But the most important part of this is for you to understand our vision. And our vision isn't just us in Toronto Police, it's also all our partners to go forward. And we'd love to hear your insights to fill in the gaps in what we know and what we don't know. Oops, wrong one. This, in our town hall 2 weeks ago, I was here early at the front and I was waiting for people to come in, and a 75-year-old lady comes in a wheelchair. And she comes in and she sees me and she says, Ron, actually I'm here to talk to you. She follows me on Twitter or something like that. I go, what's up? And she pulls in and she says, listen, I need some help. I go, well, what do you need? She says, my time is limited. She says, I'm going to die soon. And she goes, where I need your help is, she tells me her story, and I'll tell you her story. It's the best way to do it. When she was 11, both her parents passed away. When she was 15, she was sexually assaulted, had a child. She decided to keep that child. As she got older, her 15-year-old daughter had a child. And as time went on, that 15-year-old became gang involved. And she had her kid when she was 15. Her kid had a kid when she was 15. And now at the age of 75, she's a great-grandmother because her granddaughter had another kid at the age of 15. And she says, listen, my time is limited. And I go, okay, you told me all these things. I don't know what to tell you. What do you want from me? And she says, what I need to do is I need to get a hold of my great-granddaughter and let her know that this doesn't need to repeat itself. She says, I lived my whole life victimized. My daughter became victimized. My granddaughter became victimized. And now my great-granddaughter is out there and I have no communication with her, but I need her to know life doesn't have to be this way. And the reason I bring that up here and why that was so impactful for us at the time was that is exactly what we're trying to do. And it's a beautiful way to kind of look at what happens when things go unaddressed in families that know that they need help. These are all the different types of people that we have at these events that we've collected and that we've spoken to. At the beginning, when we planned to do these town halls, we planned to really focus on, at the time, parents of gang members. Or we thought, we can do YouTube ads, Instagram ads, we can do all these promotional pieces in schools, but is a gang member at that age, do they have the insight and awareness to understand there's something wrong? And the other one, are they going to be motivated after watching a YouTube ad to say, I'm going to change my life? Probably not. So we decided to focus on parents and family members of gang members or other people related to that. And what we found was, as we did it, we just thought that's who we're going to get here. We started to find all these different types of people coming up. And everybody had a different reason to show up. And is anybody here somebody, or does anybody here not fit in any of these categories?
They're broad enough that everyone's going to fit.
Yeah, but they're broad enough because these are the type of people that we've had show up. You know, I'll tell you, one of the most impactful that we have that shows up to these type of things when it comes down to gang prevention and stopping the growth of gangs are parents of victims of gang violence. We had in the last town hall that we had last week, and Tuesday we had a town hall. And in that town hall, we had a mother stand up who said that she heard fireworks outside of her door. Middle of the day, she thought she heard fireworks. She went outside to go check and see if her kid is okay, and she found her 15-year-old kid shot and killed. Kid's not a gang member. Unfortunately, the people who shot her kid was a gang member. And at the same time, we had another parent who at some point afterwards spoke to me privately and said that she feels some shame because her child is a gang member who is in jail for a shooting. And we realized, oh, when we're talking about gangs, it's not as simple as just looking at the family members of gang members. It's also looking at the victims of gang violence, concerned citizens, law enforcement officials, politicians, and everybody and anybody. And on the topic of politicians and the media and our chief of police and the higher-ups not being here, there's a reason why they're not here. Our first town hall that we did it, we thought we're going to invite the chief here, we're going to invite the media, we're going to have something big here. It's really good to have the attention. It spreads the message. But the feedback we got from the first one was they were so open to communication. And the reason they said this wasn't a photo opportunity for them. Right? We didn't treat it that way. We didn't know it was going to be that way, but they said they really appreciated the fact that we're having a conversation with them and that this wasn't an opportunity for election, this wasn't an opportunity for a photo opportunity, and this wasn't a crime scene. And I'll ask you, for where you live now, it might be true, it might not be true, but it's something that's been a theme for us. Do you feel as if the only time you see the media and politicians in your neighborhood is when there's a crime scene or an election?
Yes. Yes.
Do you feel that?
Yes.
How does that make you feel? What is the impacts of that for you? Yes. Yes.
It makes me lose interest in watching the media.
Loses interest. Yes, sir. You were saying.
Yeah, just it's kind of similar. It's like a lack of trust almost.
It's a lack of trust.
Not really concerned, right? So
Yeah. And yourself, sir?
Same thing.
Same thing.
Lack of trust.
So the community was so appreciative of the fact that we actually sat and listened at the tail end, and they opened up to us amazingly well that we decided to keep that theme. So right after that, the chief of police called us and says, guys, are going to be the next one. We had to say, sorry, you can't come. This is working for us. This is working towards getting the message and building relationships in the community. So we stuck to it. The media calls all the time, and we have to say, no, this isn't a place for you to bring your camera and to shine it on. We need to have people feel comfortable in speaking about how they feel. And we don't want to put anybody at risk. So we keep the media away. We've told them we can talk to you on a Saturday or a Sunday, but not on today. And they've been very respectful of that. One of the issues we had, again, when we talked about was how do we get a gang member out of a gang, right? And that's a very good thing. So I got to ask you here, if you were to get a gang member out of a gang, and we got to think strategically now, there's two things that we have to focus on. Number one, it's where do we go and who's a gang member, all right? And where do we go? And I'll give you a reason, or the actual reason why we're in your neighborhood now and why we're here. One, we're at this facility because in your neighborhood here, this was the only facility that could hold this many people in a safe place that's not affiliated to anything. So we wanted to do it here. And the second one was in the city of Toronto, it's been split up into 140 neighborhoods. Are you guys all familiar with that? They announced it. I'll give you the background to that. So these are the 40 neighborhoods. And when it came down to gangs, we had to figure out where we're going to go. And we had to figure out an objective way to do it, not a subjective. So initially, again, we had to focus on where do we go. So we ended up speaking to a bunch of police officers, and we said, guys and girls, we're going to go in, we're going to find gang members, we're going to get them out of a gang. Where do we go? And they all told us neighborhood. So if I were to ask you here now, imagine this, I have a magic pill. And this magic pill, when I give it to a kid being anybody under the age of 21, that's a male or a female, that's gang involved, it's a full-fledged gang member. And when we give this person this pill, their life is going to change. Not only are they going to become super educated, they're going to be super successful in their life, they're going to become a multimillionaire, they're going to come back to the neighborhood that they grew up in, they're going to create economy, industry, business, and they're going to create thousands of jobs, and there's going to be a statue for this kid, and they're going to say, man, this kid made it. If I were to ask you here, where do I go? I got this pill, we have 1 hour, I need to find this kid. Where should I go with this pill? It's going to change his life and thousands of other lives. But I got to go to a gang area in the city of Toronto, so where do I go? And keep in mind, when we speak openly here, it's a judgment-free room. All right, this is absolutely judgment-free, just based on your experience. So we got an hour, and we're going to change somebody's life, but I need all of us to work together here. So where do I go with this pill?
you're asking for neighborhoods?
Yeah, I'm asking for neighborhoods where you think I'm going to find a gang member.
There's Flemmel, there's Parma Court, there's Wakunda Place.
Yep.
there's
Lots of
some
places.
ones that- yeah, there's lots of them.
Is everybody Is anybody opposed, let's just say Parma Court? Is anybody opposed to Parma Court? Is that a good area for us to start? Guys, we have now 50 minutes. This pill, I got to give it to somebody.
I'm only saying that because that's where I am.
Yeah, 100%. And that's fine. And it's totally fine.
East
Right?
Jordan.
East Jordan.
Yeah.
But listen, in the interest of just being open and honest here, we're going to change a kid's life. Forget about anything else. Parma Court, are we good? We good? Parma Court? Perfect. All right. Here's the second part of it. What does a kid look like? Let's start with the sex, male or female. 30 minutes, guys. The time is running out. We don't have a lot of time. I need your help here. Is it a boy or a girl? Uncomfortable? Sorry? General male. Okay. So we're going to go with the male. Listen, this is the interest of just saying it. It's uncomfortable. It's going to get even more uncomfortable. Only for a little bit, and then it stops. But the point is, we got to do this. We have to do this. All right. So male, what age?
16.
Teenage years, 16. What else? Anybody else? 16? Early 20s. So let's go 16, early 20s. Everybody good with that? Parma Court, male, or 16 to 20s. How do they dress? How do they dress? Guys, we're going to, 20 minutes. This pill's going to change our life. Expensive clothing. Give me some brand names.
Nikes, Adidas.
Nikes, Adidas, Fila's. Everybody's good with that? Yeah. Do they have a hat on? Do they not have a hat? Do they have a special type of hairstyle? They got headphones in? What kind of music are they listening to? Trap music, right? It was just like a form of hip hop. Everybody good with that? We're good? We're going to change this kid's life. We got 10 minutes left. What skin color?
I don't think that exactly matters.
Listen, we got 10 minutes. It does matter in this scenario right now. We got 10 minutes. And if we're not going to speak how we actually feel about things right now, what we actually think and our experiences, and keep in mind, your experiences are 100% true to you, but they might be lying to you. But we got 5 minutes now. And I got this pill. I'm going to change this kid's life. So now I need you to get over what you feel other people are going to think about you. We need to get to what you're actually thinking.
So that's Parma. It's probably black.
Parma, so it's probably black. Okay, so are we good with that? We're going to change this kid's life. Anybody opposed to anything? So now I go to Parma Court. I find that 16 to 21-year-old kid who's dressed in Fila's Adidas. He's listening to trap music. And I grab this kid by the back of his head and I force this pill down his throat. I said, I got 1 minute. We're going to change your life because you're a gang member. How many kids in Parma Court look like that? How many kids look like that aren't gang members?
A lot.
A lot. And that's the problem. I'll tell you this is our 9th one. And thank you so much for speaking what you felt, and I'll tell you why. In every one of these, the description has been the exact same. So don't feel as if your thoughts are not felt by other people. Now here's the tricky part to that. That's not true at all. It's not true based on what we know. It's not true based on academics. It's not true based on anything. The point of doing this is, if we're not going to speak truly and honestly and freely about what we feel based on our experiences, whether it be on TV or our personal experiences, we're never going to get to the root cause of this issue. And this is all about root cause issues. So we got to get over feeling as if we're going to hurt each other's feelings, because the scope and the vision of this is saving a lot of people's lives. We're looking at kids that are, how old are you, young lady? 11? We're looking at 11-year-olds in the city of Toronto that unfortunately are being arrested with guns. And if we're not willing to speak openly about how we feel in the interest of finding a solution because we don't want to offend anybody, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not okay with that. I'm okay getting uncomfortable. It's part of the solution. But we relied on academics. So I'll tell you how we ended up in this area. We looked at the city of Toronto. They broke it up to 140 different neighborhoods. Out of those 140 neighborhoods, 31 of those were deemed low equitable neighborhoods, which just meant that on a score for equity, 31 of them were low. Now here's the good news is in 2020, the city of Toronto was dumping in millions of dollars to get that score higher into these communities, yours being one of them. These are based off of these 5 findings. What are the economic opportunities in here? What does social development look like here? What do you feel like your voice is in the decision making in your actual community? Do you feel as if your concerns are being addressed here at any level in the community? Do you? Yes or no?
No.
No. Healthy lives, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally. And the last one was physical surroundings. What is your access to an economic core? What is the access from here to downtown Toronto or to other job opportunities? And unfortunately, 31 neighborhoods in the city of Toronto were deemed low equitable, which are below the standard or acceptable standard. Now here's the crazy part. When we looked at our gang mapping and we wanted to see where do gang members live, where do they commit their violence, if I were to take that map and I were to take this low equity map and we put them over, it's almost the exact same. Which sounds crazy on its face, but the research says actually that's how it's supposed to look, which is a bigger problem for us. And the second part became who joined gangs. So I'll ask you here. So now we know how we got to where we got to, right? We know what the vision is. The vision is stop kids from getting into gangs in the first place. The second part is we know where we need to start. This is the start. This is not the end. This is the very beginning. We need to get into the most impacted areas, be in the communities that you live in. Now the second part of that is who joins gangs. So let's describe a person who joins gangs. So if I were to ask you to describe. Sorry?
Possibly a depressed teen.
Yeah, possibly a depressed teen. Fair.
Bored young person. Youth.
Bored young person, youth. Vulnerable people. What else?
Impressionable.
Impressionable.
Peer pressured.
Peer pressured, fantastic. Poverty. Poverty is a huge one, right? And what are the reasons behind poverty?
They just want to maybe they're in a single parent home and perhaps they get a mother or father raising them. They see them in a tough situation. They want to help them somehow or make some money.
Mm-hmm.
Just improve their life to keep up with their peers at school.
Mm.
Perhaps they wear nicer clothes. They want to get those shoes, the Nikes.
Everybody needs money, but money's not potentially the most important thing for a lot of people, and it might be for you, and that's cool too.
I know you're not allowed to do this necessarily, but like, check their library checkouts.
Okay, so he's saying,
I bet you the kid is not a frequent library user.
so he's saying is maybe I'll frame that a different way. I'll say maybe educationally frustrated.
Why not?
Fair term. So that became our second part, was who joins gangs. And I'll tell you, we went and we spoke to a bunch of other officers. We spoke to experienced gang investigators, and we said, okay, if you were to describe somebody who joins the gangs, what would you say? And they said, as long as we did, a whole bunch of things that it says today. But it's very important to know those are reasons why people might join gangs, and they're important to know, but we have to first know what are we going to define as a gang. So if I were to ask you now here, actually before we get to that, I'll ask you now here, if I were to ask you to define what a gang is, what would you say is a gang? In your experience. Its own family, right? Its own family. But for us, we had to look something a little bit more straightforward with it. So with us, again, academically based and on the standards, we know what the vision is. We know what areas we're in. We know what we want to do. When it comes down to looking at a gang, before we look at gang members, gangs only exist for 3 reasons, all right? Yes, did you want to say something?
I wanted to describe
Go ahead. Go ahead.
a group of people who cause discomfort among
Social environment. So he said a group of people that cause discomfort among a social environment. And that's pretty right. But I'm going to give you 3 things we got to look at, all right? And everything gang related is related to these 3 things. A gang is formed to control an area. The reason they want to control an area is to deal drugs, and the control in the area is also to collect debt. All right, so control an area, deal drugs, collect debt. Everything else that happens that gangs do is somewhat connected to one of those 3 things. So we know those are the 3 things. That being said, if we see 3 kids in a park across the street playing in a park and they look like what we described before, are they a gang member based on that? Kids playing in a park? Not at all. Would somebody driving by look at that and say these are gang members? Possibly. Possibly somebody not from the area would look at it and say, oh man, those are gang members right there. But that's not who we're looking at. And I'll tell you, when it comes down to gang members and who joins gangs, there were so many things that we've written down, there's so many things that we discussed about that are similar to you, but were you guys given the risk factor cards? Do you mind if I grab this from you?
Oh, that's all right.
So this card here, this is like our bread and butter, all right? When it comes down to knowing where we go, we already know where we go there. We're in the low equitable neighborhoods that also where our gangs live and where they commit some crimes. But this card here in front of you, Public Safety Canada in 2007 published this, as they're called gang risk factors. We have it up there. And what they looked at, it was PhDs and academics all over the world looked at this and cited these risk factors as saying, the more of these risk factors you can check off, the more likely you are to become a gang member. And if you look at these risk factors, does anything in there mention sex, race, ethnicity, culture, background? I'll tell you the answer. The answer is no. None of it does. In fact, these risk factors are social things that happen to people from the age of 0 all the way up to 18, that the more of these that happen that go unaddressed, the more likely the kid is to become a gang member. Not only a gang member, but also criminal, and probably reduce their lifespan. And I'll tell you a story because these pop up at different times in different people's lives. One of the first kids that we ever dealt with. So keep in mind, we've spent 3 years trying to figure out how to do this. We've tried a whole bunch of pilot projects for 6 months to a year at a time to try different strategies. And one of our beginning strategies was we spent 6 months educating 2,000 frontline police officers on these gang risk factors. And what we told them was, in the course of your duties, if you're out there going to a 911 radio call, you're doing community work, you know somebody, and you have a recognition that they suffer from these risk factors, and you can have a conversation, a trusting conversation, and say to them, hey, if you want to get out of a gang, or you're on the path to becoming a gang member, or you want to mitigate these risk factors, let me know. And what we asked those coppers to do is, once they did let them know, for them to call us and we can figure it out. So one police officer, within a week of training this person, said, I found somebody who fits your bill. 15-year-old kid that we just arrested. So myself and Jason went down to this police station and we spoke to this 15-year-old kid, and I'll tell you his story, and I'll tell you where the risk factors come into play, because he is a great story to outline the importance of these risk factors. He's a great story in terms of the story, but the ending's not the best. But that's okay. It's about the interest of the story. So these risk factors that I gave you, there's 5 categories. The first one is family, and that's the one that pops up from the age of 0 to 6. And that's the most important thing to look at. And with family, what happens is, the biggest indicator is, does anybody here know a 3-year-old who's a complete terror? Who's a nightmare? I'm not talking a 3-year-old who does like small naughty things. I'm talking the one who pees everywhere, who touches the walls, who picks their nose, who steals stuff, who pushes people, who hits people. Everybody knows that person. If you don't know that person when you were a kid, you were probably that person. It's okay. You made it out here now. So that's the first indicator. And you got to look at that and say, a kid who behaves that poorly at that age should be a big indicator. Say there might be something else going on. And in the risk factor categories, there's about 8 of them that lie in the family one. And in the family one, this kid at the age of 0 to 6, that's when it starts to show itself. And this kid that we were dealing with, this 15-year-old, we talked to him and we talked to his mom. We always include the parents if they're under the age 18. And what the mom tells us is this. The mom had her 5th kid by the age of 25. She's in community housing. She's a single parent. And her middle child is the kid we're dealing with. And this middle kid, what she tells us is, listen, this kid was that terror, all right? And I want you to think here, if you're a parent, when you are washing your dishes and your kids were 3 to 6, you're washing your dishes and you listen, and there's noise, is everything okay or is everything wrong? You're washing your dishes, you can hear them playing. They're okay, right?
It's fine.
What happens when there's no noise?
Somebody just got hurt or something happened.
Something's up, right? Something's up. So mom says, this is this kid. Every time I wash the dishes, he doesn't do anything. I go and I find him doing something really, really bad. She says, I'm so frustrated. I got 4 other kids to take care of, but this guy, this is the one kid for me. And then the second risk factor is this 6-year-old kid goes to school. And that's where the school risk factors come into play. And the biggest indicator in the school environment is, and are there any teachers in here or people from the academic world that would have taught a kindergartner or been involved in a kindergartner? What was your experience with that?
They're very stubborn.
They're very stubborn, right? Kids are very stubborn, especially kindergartners. They're set in their ways. Well, this same kid, who's the middle of 5 kids in the low-income area, goes out to school and he continues to have this behavior. Right? He shows up there and he's that disruptive kid. Again, he's that one in kindergarten that nobody wants to play with. So he gets isolated, and poor teachers, they're angels to me. I love teachers. But now they have to pull this kid aside to get one-on-one care, and he gets isolated and pulled away from the rest of the group. Now, there's something really important to know about this between the ages of 0 to 7. Our brains operate in what's called a theta wave. And what a theta wave is, it's a state of hypnosis. And in that state of hypnosis, as kids, all of us went through it, you're gathering information subconsciously, and the information you're gathering is not to succeed in life, it's to survive in life. So this kid's already firing and wiring stuff in his brain that says, when I do naughty things, what do I get from people that I want? What does he get? He gets attention. So at home, when he does naughty things, what happens? Mom stops doing what she does, comes over, gives him attention, moves him away, yells at him. This kid's satisfied. At school, he does the same thing. Teacher pulls him away, he gets pulled away, one-on-one tension, he's satisfied. All right, they're trying their best. But this kid's already understanding, when I do this behavior, without even knowing what he's doing, this is what happens. So at the age of 6, he fails kindergarten. And I know people say to me, hey, this is Canada, nobody fails. Listen, there is a big difference in passing and succeeding. And for the educators in the room or people who have that experience, that type of kid, he might move on to grade 1, but did he pass or succeed? He passed. So we're not even holding them to a higher standard, right? It's just let this kid through this process. Now all of a sudden, this kid becomes 9 years old. And I don't know about you, but I know for me, at 9 years old, I was out and playing on my own. Right? Now I have a 9-year-old, my kid can't go anywhere without me. All right, I'm there. I have a mouth guard. I have war paint. I'm ready to go. I don't know what I'm looking for, but I'm looking for something. I got to protect my little girl. But it's the city of Toronto. Those of you who live in community housing or been to community housing, I'm just bringing that up because it's the example in this story. The mom says, my son, she lives in community housing, 3 years old gives me a hard time, 6-year-old gives school a hard time. At the age of 9, he's a little old enough, I say to him, get out of here. Dump your energy. You got too much energy. So this kid goes outside. And he's already fired and wired in his brain. He says, when I do naughty things, I get what I want, which is attention. Now you have this 9-year-old who's out on his own for the first time, and he's playing in the lobby of his building. And what happens? He finds another kid. Is this kid more like him or less like him? More like him. So for the first time, this kid, he's like, oh my God, I found my people. These are who I'm with. Because he found other kids just like him. And now that kid goes from 1 to 4 to 5 to 8 to 10. And they're rolling around. Well, in this particular case, the mom tells us some background and we can confirm it by police records. And this is where law enforcement gets involved. So mom realizes at the age of 8, listen, he's made some friends. He's kind of out of my hair. I can manage these other 4 kids. This is perfect. So she manages to get him a bicycle. All right, I don't know how, it doesn't even matter. She gets this kid a bicycle. She gives him a bike and she says, go now, you can go play with your friends. Well, unfortunately, he's not in the best area, so he has his bicycle. He goes and he rides his bike around. He drops it off. He goes into the store. He comes out, and what happens to the bike?
It's gone.
It's gone. Bike's gone. He goes home, and he tells his mom, he says, Mom, the bike you got me, it's gone. And I want you to think of this. You're that parent. All right, you're struggling. You got 5 kids. The one who's a pain in your butt. I don't know how you did it, but you managed to get this guy a bike. And within a week, he comes home and he says to your mom, that bike you slaved for, I lost it. Somebody took it. What does mom say to that kid? What would you say? And I don't want anybody to pretend like they're perfect here, because I'd be pretty upset.
How did that happen?
Sorry?
How did that happen?
How did that happen? Right? So this mom says to the kid, one job. You just had to be responsible for this. You can't even do that. You don't know what I did for this. She goes on and on. So this kid feels terrible guilt. He goes out. Mom, a year later, feels bad for this kid, manages to get him another bicycle. Same thing happens. In both accounts, they call the Toronto police. We show up. And hey, I'll be honest with you, man. The city of Toronto, there's 30 billion bicycles in the city. All right, if you report your bicycle stolen to us, unless we really come across it by accident, likelihood of you getting your bike back is like slim to none. I'm just going to be straight up with you. You don't see a bicycle gang prevention task force here, right? It's gangs, it's not bikes. So 2 times they report it to police, 2 times we can't find it. So there's already now a bit of a lack of confidence in the police's ability to be able to perform well. Even though that was just a bicycle in some respects, it's a lot to that family, it's a lot to that people. So now there's a conversation in the house that's not kind about police, which is okay. It's part of life. Now this kid, 10 years old, nothing happens. Then 11 years old, this kid gets reported missing. One time he doesn't come home. Right? I know for me, when I was out at 9, I just had to be home before the streetlights came on. Right? That was the indicator. As soon as the streetlights came on, I had to run home. Well, streetlights hit, this kid didn't come home. She calls the police. We show up, we talk to the mom. Where is he? She says, I don't know, he has these friends. We managed to find this kid around the corner. And what we do is when we find that kid around the corner, we got to know the other kids that this kid was with. Reason being is if this guy goes missing again, we got to be able to call his friends and say, hey, do you know where he is? So we collect some information. We bring this kid back home. A year later, kid goes missing again. This time, the police officers who are before going to the mom's house said, oh, last time he was found around the corner. We're going to go there. Go around the corner, they find him there. And he's with more friends. Then they take this kid home. Now the attitude changing a little bit, right? Comes home, and then at 13, this kid goes missing again. This time, nobody can find him. A week passes, and he shows up, and mom said he changed. And then for us, unfortunately, we get to the individual risk factor category. We're at the age of 15. We're in a police station. Myself and my partner, Detective Jason Kondo, we're interviewing this 15-year-old kid now. And his biggest indicator for gang risk factors, in this case here, is self-admitted gang membership. So we ask him flat out, are you a gang member? What does he say? Yeah, 100%. Not only that, he lifts his shirt up and he's got another shirt underneath it that has the gang name. Then he shows us on his social media all his gang posts. Right? Everything he does, hashtag gang, hashtag whatever he has put in there. Not only that, as we start talking to him, we ask him, we said, how did you get involved in this gang? And what he tells us is at the age of 12, an OG, and an OG is what they call an original gangster, old-time gangster. It's somebody who's been a gang member in a neighborhood for a long time that everybody knows. This kid says, at the age of 12, an OG recruited me, and I'll ask you here, a 12-year-old got recruited. How old do you think the person was that recruited him into this type of life?
45.
45? Yeah. 30s? Anybody else? 45, 30s? Old-time gangster? The kid that recruited him was 16 years old. So we realized very early on that there's kids recruiting gangs into this life cycle. And when we found out who that kid was that were recruited him, keep in mind this kid was recruited at 12, he's now 15, which means that the 16-year-old who recruited him was now 19. The 19-year-old was a suspect in a murder. So we started to see some big indicators of what's happening. Now, unfortunately, with this kid at the age of 15, we lost any sort of motivation we had with him, any sort of relationship. And what we realized with this kid was we're only there for maybe half an hour once a week. We have that motivation in the moment, but we lose it everywhere else. So we decided to go to his house. We talked to his mom. When we knocked on the door, we asked the mom, we said, hey, man, where's this kid been? We haven't heard from him in a while. And on a whim, what we end up doing is we take these risk factors and that card that you have, and we have a sheet. And we literally fill it out with every kid that we deal with. Now we also expand it out to the parents. So with the mom, we said, you know what, why don't we fill out this risk factor with you and see what's happening with you and see where you need help. Because we started to think that while we're not there 24 hours a day, who is? It's mom. He's got a central pillar at home. So if we can strengthen the family home, we got a better chance that he's not going to influence the 4 other kids to join a gang, and this kid's got a central pillar at home. So let's strengthen the mom as best as we can. And what we had found was that the mother had more risk factors than the kid. So we started to think about it. We started to talk to people. And we talked to a lot of psychologists. We talked to a lot of mental health professionals to say, what is your take on this? And one of the things that we had come across was this. I want you to think here, who's an immigrant to this country? Where did you come from, brother? Croatia? Yes, yourself. Angola? Anybody else immigrated here? Yes, sir. Where'd you go? India? So for you who've immigrated here, it was tough, right? And your parents, for you to come, was it tough? Whose life was worse if you had to compare the two? Your life or your parents' life?
I grew up in a war zone.
You grew up in a war zone. I can't even compete with that. That's horrible, man. So you grew up in a war zone. Your parents went through the war.
Yeah.
They had you, and then what did they say to you?
Just get the hell out of here.
Get out of here, so you go, right? So for me, I'll tell you what, I was having coffee the other day, and I usually get my coffee with cream, and somebody put milk in my coffee, and I thought my day was ruined. And I was like, oh, my day, it sucks. I was going to call in sick to work. I couldn't take it. And I thought to myself, my life is hard. And then I stopped and I thought about this story. I said, no, man. Listen, my parents immigrated here as well. And their life was hard. That was difficult. I could not do what they did. There's no way I could do it. I just don't have the resiliency to do it. But they did it. And then my life is actually much easier than theirs. But then I look at my kids, and my kids are spoiled. They got everything that I never had, right? And I blame them all the time. I said, you're spoiled, but I'm the dummy spoiling them. I get it. But the point of that story is it's supposed to get easier. So with this mom, even though she had more risk factors than her child, and her child ended up as a gang member, she's trying her best. She's absolutely trying her best. And her best was 4 out of the 5 turned out somewhat all right. Like they're doing good. But this one got away, and we don't know how to do it. And for us, we lose this kid, right? We don't have any influence. We don't have any relationship with this kid now. He wants nothing to do with us. And what's inevitably going to happen is this kid's going to become a community problem, which he probably is now. And what the community problem is this. We have federal leaders in the election talking now about what? Many different things, but one of the big topics they have when it comes down to Toronto is what? What do you see them talking about? Guns, gangs. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And every individual has a different platform, and they say, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and all these things are going to really help stop gun and gang violence. Well, for us, it doesn't really matter in terms of who does that, right? We're going to figure something out. We have strategies to do, and this isn't to say one is right and one is wrong. It's just to say all of them are right in the respect that they're used. But for this kid, he's going to be a community problem. And that's when you read in the newspaper that there's been a daytime shooting in areas where there wasn't shootings before. Where now you're seeing homicide victims of different ages, different races, different nationalities. And now people get concerned, and what happens is people say at this point here, somebody has to do something. Am I right or am I wrong? Yeah. And when you say somebody has to do something about violence in the community, who's that somebody?
Oh, they mean the police, of course.
The police.
Yeah, like
right.
no one else can do it.
911, the police or government, somebody's got to do something about it. And I'll tell you this, 100% we're the ones to come in and do it. And we take that responsibility. And if you don't think that us as police officers read those headlines and we don't get motivated to want to come in and find these people that do these violent things, you're wrong. We do. We're very motivated to do it. But in our scope and our vision of what we were assigned to do, what my mission is here, I'll say, I got to stop gangs from happening in the first place. So my focus comes into this. And the reason I bring that up now is at the age of 3, we have 8 risk factors to worry about. Then as you get older, there's 36 of them. By the time we hit 18, there's 36, split up into 5 categories. So to think one thing is going to solve all that, that's a lot. And I'll ask you this, we'll just break it down nice and simple. The 5 categories: family, school, individual, peer group, individual, and then community. 5 of them, right? If these were 5 different risk factor categories and we broke them up into different colored balls, red, black, orange, white, blue, and I asked you here and I said, we're going to make as many different combinations of just those 5, out of these 5 balls, how many combinations do you think we can make? I'll tell you, 3,125. So whenever I get asked, or myself or Jason or any of the other officers that help working with us, and they say to us, what's the program look like? I say there is no program. Because if I had one program to deal with 3,125 different combinations of problems, I wouldn't be here. I would have sold this. I would have been on the Oprah Winfrey Network. I would have been on the Barbados, Skyping my stuff in it, because I would have sold this because it's worth trillions of dollars, because every major city in the world has this problem. There isn't one solution, but there are many solutions that we can drop in. So the point of this was to educate people on the risk factors, to say, how much easier would it have been if at the age of 3, when the mom recognized that, yeah, on top of my child's behavior, all these other risk factors are something that we're dealing with, how much more easy, doable, economical is it to get into those families to say, let's strengthen the family home to prevent the other 28 risk factors from happening. It's easy to deal with this, but it's hard to deal with 36. I'll come back to you in a minute. This just shows you what works at what time. All right, so in the Toronto Police Service, you got 3, 6, 9, 15, 18. Our actual gang prevention model, this is a part of it. This is the very first part of it. It's called the education strategy. So we have 4 big pillars: education, prevention, intervention, and suppression. And prevention is stopping things. So if we can get in from the age of 3 to 9, if we can get in there and support these families, not as a Toronto Police, but by connecting families to free social services within where they live to help them do it, that's the most effective. That's evidence-based. That's not an idea. That's what the academics are saying in the field. Then when you hit between 9 to 15, we need to intervene. All right, 9 to 15 is a critical age too, because that's when we start to see criminality happen. And that's where you need to get the people that have been arrested, and when they come into police contact with the beginning of it, we need to get them hooked up with services to be able to address their needs so that they don't do this again. And at the age of 18, this is where the police come into play. This is where we are the captains of the ship, and it's called suppression. And what this means is you need to arrest the most violent people in the community, the ones that are pulling the trigger, the ones that are trafficking in kids, the ones that are dealing drugs, that are causing people to die. And that's what we do, and that's where we're supposed to sit. But our name of this was the Integrated Gang Prevention Task Force. And the purpose of integrated was we got to bring in different groups to help us out. As a police officer, I have no idea how to deal with poverty. I don't have any academic background in it. I have no economical background. I have nothing to add to that. But I know what I do well. But the idea is we have people who can do these different things. So we actually took a model from the United States, which is the comprehensive gang model. And does everybody know what this is? It's a Rubik's Cube. And the purpose of this game, it's a small little piece of brick you can give, and this will highlight the idea of what we want to do going forward is, look at a Rubik's Cube, and the point of this is it's got 6 different sides, 9 blocks in a side. Each of those blocks are different colors. And usually when you get it, it doesn't look like this. It's all jumbled up, right? I have no idea how to put it together. But what we've been doing for years is, as police, we look at that Rubik's Cube, and all we care about is our blue side. So we just put the block together, and as soon as the blue side makes sense, we go, we got it. We did our job. We're going to fix this problem. We don't realize on the other side is community housing. And while our side is lined up, the community housing side, it's all messed up. So they adjust it. And when they adjust, we get messed up. On the other side are hospitals. The other side are schools. On top of that, you have families. Underneath it, you have social services. You have a ton of different agencies. So we realized very quickly that in order for this to happen, on each one of these risk factor categories, or on each one of the age groups, we need to bring in stakeholder partners. And these stakeholder partners are this. These are all the people that need to be integrated into a global citywide gang prevention strategy. Our goal with this, while the Toronto Police is starting this conversation, is not to own this. This will eventually end up somewhere else. It might end up with the City of Toronto, it might end up with the school board, but the point is to bring in all these groups together, have them come together, have some sort of understanding on what we're looking at, and understanding where we can help each other so that the kid never becomes a gang member to begin with. And if we can do that, we can potentially stop an epidemic, a problem of kids becoming criminals and gang members.
So, is it possible that Dr. Katie Kamkar can maybe get this and share it with some other physicians?
Katie Kamkar is one of our consultants that we use. She's great.
What I'm getting at,
Before you get there, well, I'm going to stop you right there. We're going to get there. I'm going to dialogue. We'll get to dialogue, and that's where we're going to speak about it. So this is the open dialogue portion we're going to come into. I'm going to give you 3 examples of some of the insights that we've gained in these open dialogues before we get there. that have been really impactful for us. And these are the 3 of many that we have. And I want you to start thinking now in the scope of when we have the open dialogue of these are the type of contributions that have been extremely valuable to us. This was from a well-known community leader in the city of Toronto. This community leader is in every gang neighborhood. They are entrenched in here. They're in many documentaries. They are very knowledgeable. And this is one of the first things he said to me was, we're not underserviced, we're poorly serviced. And that comes down to social services that are provided to people who need it. Some social agencies, they only operate Monday to Friday and they close at 4 p.m. Some of them say that we're dealing with kids, but they operate during school hours. Some of them will only see you once every 2 months. And I'll ask you, have you ever had an experience with a social service where when you were calling for help, they were closed, you couldn't find their building, they couldn't send staff members, there was a year wait list. If you were over the age of 18, good luck to you. So it became clear for us to say, we got it. And the reason why we get this is with all our partner stakeholder groups, and we have about 20 different government agencies on the horizontal level being police, police, hospitals, jails, corrections, probation, school board. On this level, we have about 18 people, 18 organizations working together on this. And then vertically, we have municipal, provincial, and federal levels of government. And that's where when I put these snippets online, those are the people looking at it and say, all right, we're interested to hear what you have to say. And when we go back by knowing things like this, where we're not underserviced, we're poorly serviced, what that did for us, it clarified something. And it clarified that we don't need more programs, we need to invest in the ones that work. And the ones that don't work, we need to kind of pull back from that. So even as police officers, before we can refer a family to an organization or to a social service, we try to do our due diligence to find out, are you doing what you say you're doing? A lot of these organizations, unfortunately, don't. The good part about that is, through the process of doing this, we found some amazing organizations that are looking to expand, and with our backing from here and back from the community, or ones that actually work here, we can get them more funding to reduce that wait list, to increase their hours of operation, and to make them more accessible. One of the things that popped up as a side conversation was, for you to come out here, first off, thank you so much for coming. I know it's tough to do, especially on a weekday, but for some of the communities that we're in, they want to be here, they just can't afford to come out with 3 kids and take the bus and have to deal with the headache of coming out in the cold and finding parking. And I know this wasn't the easiest place to do it, but it's a part of it. Now we're looking at expanding strategies with social work agencies to say, instead of making them come to you, can we deploy you out to a house? How much easier would that be for everybody else? The second insight that we had was distrust starts at home. All right, and here I'll give you the law enforcement angle onto that, or the police angle of it, is we, as a police officer, okay, here I'll ask you here, what's the worst thing a gang can do in your eyes? Kill somebody. Right? So in police, we call it a homicide or a murder. So with us, as police officers, that's the absolute worst. All right, is when we have to go to a crime scene for a murder. And I think that's a part that doesn't get looked at enough. I did an interview a couple days ago with a news agency, and they said some ridiculous things to me, but it gave me a good opportunity to paint a picture for you. And the picture that I was painting was that as police officers, when we respond to a 15-year-old or 16-year-old kid that's been shot and killed, we're never happy about that. Nobody's giving each other high fives. Nobody is saying, this is amazing. Nobody says that. We're human beings. And not only that, but afterwards, when we're out there and we're knocking on doors, and if your door's been knocked on, and we knock on that door and we said, listen, there was a murder out here. Does anybody know anything? And people say, nope, didn't see anything, and they shut that door. And what we do? We victimize ourselves in that. And we said, we just want to come here and do our job, but now we can't do it. And we walk away super defeated. But a community member in the open dialogue helped paint a different picture for us, a very valuable picture for us. And this community member had said a year ago in that community, there was a 15-year-old kid shot and killed in the central courtyard area of this community, a very gang-impacted and very well-known community. So there's a 15-year-old shot and killed, and there was about 60 people there. Majority of them were mothers and parents of either kids in gangs or kids that were victimized by gangs. And she says, I want you to imagine this. She says, imagine being that mom, knowing that somebody in your neighborhood, potentially your neighbor, knows who killed your son. And from the moment when you wake up in your house, you know your neighbor knows, the people at the grocery store know, people at the park know, and nobody tells you. And she painted a beautiful picture for us, and that picture was that the distrust starts at home. So with us as police officers, where that really benefited us and how that helped us benefit our community partner groups and the stakeholders involved is Now for us, I actually breathed a little bit of a sigh of relief, and I saw some hope in that. And the hope was this: we realized that police officers, we're about 10% of that distrust. We're the most obvious 10%, but we're only about 10%. So mentally, going into knocking on doors and asking for information, what that does is, as we go back and we speak to all the other police officers, we run training courses on what we're learning, and we tell them, listen, get out of your head that you're 100% of the distrust. You're not that special. We're only about 10%. It becomes a much more workable number to deal with. If I were to ask you, just human to human, I want you to make a relationship. Sir, your name is? And ma'am, your name is? So if I said, I want you to make a relationship, but by the way, she also hates your guts. 100% everything she hates is you. What would your energy be like coming into that relationship?
Not particularly.
Not good. How much effort would you actually put into it? Not much. But now if I told you the same thing, and I said, listen, she's got a lot of things going on in her life. Right now, she's mad at kind of people that are kind of looking like you, but you're about this much of that. I just need to get over this much of the hurdle to be able to kind of get what we need to help everybody out. What's the attitude and energy coming in with that?
I make an effort.
Make an effort. So for us, just gaining that insight, that understanding, that perspective, it's stuff we never knew about before because we didn't know, because we didn't ask. But now that we're given an opportunity to ask, we need to know. I'll give you the last one before we start. I just want to feel respected. And this goes with everybody, right? But one of the things, and there's no right or wrong answer here. I honestly don't know, because we get conflicted. I don't know this neighborhood as well as the officers that work in this division do. I don't. I'm a West End guy. I started in the West End. I've worked all over the city, but I know the West in and out. But here, I don't know much about this side. So I'll ask you here, this is what we've heard at almost all of our town hall meetings when it comes down to relationship building and trust. Part of what we're doing here today is not just educating people, but we're looking for champions. We're looking for community leaders. We need people that we can build. As a police officer, knowing that I'm 10% of the distrust, but I'm the most obvious 10%, if I'm trying to stop this problem from happening, I can spend 90% of my time building trust, or I can find those of you here that already have influence and trust and ask you, where do you need some more help? And let you do it. We don't need the credit. We don't want the credit for this. We want to build champions in the community that show up to events like this, that have major influence on their communities, say, what can we do for you? And when it comes down to feeling respected, we've had two different views on this. One of the views was a mother, and another one, I know I keep saying mother, but there's dads there too, trust me. It's just the mothers are the most vocal at the beginning because they're passionate, they got stuff they want to say. But the mother says to us at the very beginning, she says, listen, I live in community housing. She lives in a gentrified neighborhood. All right, so she says, half of the housing tenants, they're gone. She says, but I live in housing. She says, when I live here, she goes, there's two types of people in our neighborhood. There's housing people and there's condo people. Does that echo with anybody here? So this is what she says. She says, every day I wake up and I feel like the second people find out from housing, they treat me different. Every interaction I have, I feel like I get treated different because I live in housing the second that they find it. And then the condo people, we had other town halls where there was condo people. And what they said is, we were upset that we were never included in the conversation of having housing built in our areas. And they were upset about it, and they were concerned. And both sides have absolute valid points. But going forward, when we get this open dialogue, I don't want you to think if you hear an opinion different than yours, it's an opposing opinion. I want you to keep it in the framework of it's a different opinion. All right, and in that open dialogue, we only have two rules. Super easy 2 rules. And that open dialogue is this, and I'll moderate it, so if I have to cut you off, I don't mean to be rude. It's just in the interest of figuring out what's actually happening and giving people time to talk. And the 2 rules are this. One is we stay solutions focused. All right? And sometimes part of the solution is talking about the problem, but we shouldn't be sitting on the problem for too long. We know what the problems are. We all know, right? We all know what the problem is. The whole purpose of this, telling you, is kind of say what we're looking at and to get your input based on what we're looking at. But we all know what the problem is. So we don't want to spend too much time on what the problems are. We need to focus on what is the solution to the problem. And the second part of it is, it's hard to do, but we're going to use I statements. All right, and I statements are a little bit tough. I'll explain them to you. Anybody here been to marriage counseling? Anybody here need to go to marriage counseling? Yeah. So this is what I statements are. I statements are this. If I came home and my wife says to me, Ron, you didn't take out the garbage today. I asked you to do it, and because you didn't do it, now I'm upset. I got so many other things to do. As soon as she says you to me, I'll say, oh man, my back's up against the wall. Now, if she changed that wording a little bit and she said, babe, I really wish you took out the garbage because I feel very stressed out every day. Now I'm going to listen a little bit different. So in the interest of not dividing the room, I'm just going to ask everybody to try to be cognizant and aware of that. And we're going to get some good conversations out of that. The open dialogue is open. I hope we can all be respectful of each other. We can talk openly, honestly. I'm going to shut off the mic. I'm going to shut off the camera. And then there's where we get the best insights. And we're going to give everybody a chance to say what they want to say, as well as introduce some of your local officers so you can have a connection here. And then we'll see where we go from there. So everybody, thank you. We'll take 5 minutes, grab some hot dogs. There's no hot dogs. Listen, guys, I ate at like 10 this morning, and I'm seeing hot dogs everywhere. So grab some hot dogs, grab a coffee, whatever you want, and then we'll just start back in 5 minutes. Everybody okay with that? Perfect. Thank you so much, guys.
No hot dogs for the whole reason I came.
Yeah. Thanks.